Test 1, 2. Sega.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 52 of Superannuated Starman. I'm your host, Sean Ryan, and as always, I'm joined by Chris Duerksen
Always.
and Cory Braucks.
Yes.
I hope both you guys are doing well. How is it where you guys are living, weather-wise?
It's like in the 40s. Everything's melting outside. It's good.
Melting? You had snow?
Oh yeah, we
Oh
had
my
snow
God.
for like a while now.
Yeah, we had a
Oh,
pretty nasty snowstorm like a week ago.
Yeah, it's been up and down here. Like it went from like 40 to 10 to 50 to 1.
oh my God. It's been in the 60s here, and that's still a little uncomfortable.
The beginning of this week, I was driving to work in -8 degrees, and the high for the day was like 6.
That is unacceptable.
Yeah, it was cold
Yes.
enough here that none of our chemical companies were shipping because all of their stuff would have frozen all week. So
Whoa, goodness. Well, with that said, all that harsh sound away, I'm glad that the weather's starting to turn around for you guys.
yeah, I went outside without a coat on to get the stuff out of the car. So it's real nice out.
Well, that's definitely looking up. So what are we doing today? Today we have a game that's been in the back of my mind for a very long time. A game that I always wanted to go back to and beat, but for some reason I just never found the time. Today I've made the time and we're going to discuss a cult classic on the Sega Genesis. That game is Comix Zone. Stick around and enjoy this music, and when we return, we'll discuss the history of this game. Comic Zone is a side-scrolling beat-em-up that takes place in the pages of a comic book. The game was conceived by one of STI or the Sega Technical Institute's programmers, Peter, I'm going to butcher this, Moroweg. He and his colleagues would frequent comic book shops, and during one of those trips, he thought to himself that a game where the player explores the contents of a comic could be an interesting and exciting concept, and soon began work on a demo for his Amiga, taking a lot of inspiration from the 1985 music video Take On Me by Aha to visualize how he would connect the player to both the real world and that of the comic. So I don't continue to butcher this man's name, I'm just going to use his first name. Peter presented a video titled Joe Pencil, Trapped in the Comic Zone to SDI head Roger Hector in 1992. Upon seeing the video, he encouraged Peter to pitch it directly to Tom Kalinske, the CEO of Sega of America at the time. Which I would love to talk about this guy. He's amazing. That man was a marketing genius. There's even a book called Console Wars, which is a documentary that really details the Sega versus Nintendo head-to-head that we saw during the 90s. It's an amazing read, and I encourage everyone out there to go check it out. But back to the history. Kalinske immediately approved of the game and wanted STI to start development, but this was delayed as STI was assigned to develop Sonic Spinball.
Oh, that's a great game.
I
love
don't
Sonic
know about
Spinball.
that. It's
If you're being
alright.
sarcastic or not.
No, it's a fun game. It's like if you're playing the casino level repeatedly.
And nothing but.
And that's the problem, and nothing but.
That's fine.
But Sonic Spinball was in development so that they had a Sonic title during the 1993 holiday season. Upon Sonic Spinball's release, STI pitched more concepts to Sega's management, and remembering Comix Zone, Kalinske ordered STI to begin development on the title. Starting off as a team of 3, Peter was joined by Adrian Stevens, a programmer, and Dean Lester, who would act as the executive producer. The team would eventually balloon up to over a dozen people, which was a large team for this time period.
My God.
They even hired a comic book artist, Alex Nino, to assist in the game's design. As I mentioned previously, the protagonist's name was originally Joe Pencil, who was a scrawny teen that would transform into a superhero. And there's a little bit of remnants of that as you complete each level, the main character will transform momentarily. Sega's marketing team objected to the name and design and wanted to include a sidekick, and so Peter went about redesigning the character. As Peter was a fan of the Smashing Pumpkins, the character was changed to resemble a grunge punk rocker, and the name was changed to Sketch Turner. Peter also included a rat as Turner's sidekick, as a rat, quote, didn't take up much screen space, and we could do quite a bit with it in terms of puzzles and such. Wanting to remain faithful to the comic book theme, the beginning and ending sequences were drawn in pencil and ink before being scanned in and processed for the Sega Genesis. During development, Adrian Stevens, the game's programmer and one of the 3 original members of the team, Stevens said that he found it challenging to program the game so that it would fit within the 2 megabytes while being able to decompress large pages of graphics during gameplay. He noted that the Genesis was not really designed with this process in mind, but was pleased that he managed to make it happen. Though development was relatively smooth, feature creep did set in as the team tried to add more and more features, resulting in the scope of the game getting ballooned in size and causing delays, which would eventually lead to pressure mounting on the team as the American STI team had not released a game since Sonic Spinball. Further complicating the situation, Sega was set to release the 32X and eventually the Sega Saturn. During this time, Stevens was also expecting a child, so the scope of the game was reduced and 2 levels were left on the cutting room floor. Not only was development shrunk down, but Sega's testing department made the recommendation to vastly increase the game's difficulty. The result was that the average player found it difficult, if not outright impossible, to complete the game. Following the recommendation of the testing team would go on to be something that Peter would eventually regret. When the game was sent to Sega of Japan for review, they received a note stating that the game, quote, embodied everything that was wrong with American culture, to which the team took as high praise. Comix Zone was released in North America in July of 1995, September 1st in Japan, and October 27th in Europe. The game would get ported to Windows that same year in North America and the following year in Europe. Originally planned was to include a CD that contained several tracks from the game performed by Howard Duerksen, the game's composer, and his grunge band. But Sega went a different route, and Comix Zone was bundled with a CD that featured several popular songs from the artists of the time. The original concept for the CD would eventually see the light of day, as it was manufactured and distributed via magazine, and was even on Sega's short-lived Sega Tunes label. And I have a link to that I'm going to include in the show notes. Reception of the game was a mixed bag, as reviewers and players alike loved the colorful visuals and comic book aesthetic, but felt that the combat was repetitive and the puzzles were overly simplistic. Other reviewers felt that, despite the game not being executed as well as it could have, the unique concept and amazing visuals and interesting soundtrack made up for its flaws, allowing the game to land on several greatest games of all time lists. In August of 2022, Sega announced that they'd partnered with PictureStart to develop a film adaptation of the game, but I haven't found any more information on this despite doing some research, so only time will tell if we see anything, but that doesn't look too good. If you're looking to play the game today, that's going to be difficult, as one of the latest iterations of the game was released on the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive Classics Collection, which was made available on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Steam. Unfortunately, the game was delisted on December 6, 2024, but there are some physical versions of that title still floating around. There's also the Genesis Mini, which was released several years ago in 2019. But the easiest method, if you're looking to do this legitimately, is via the Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack subscription service. But probably the most difficult way to find and play this game is on the Game Boy Advance. Releasing only in Europe on September 11th, 2002, the Game Boy Advance port commands a high price, as the lowest I saw on eBay was for $350 and the highest being over $1,500. I don't have much history for this game and as far as development goes, so I think that's going to wrap it up unless you guys have anything else.
No, I don't.
With that said, stick around, and when we come back, we're going to discuss what it was like to play this game in the 90s. All right, welcome back, everybody. So this is going to be our segment where we talk about our childhood memories of the game. Cory, while we were talking off air, you said that you don't really have too many memories of this game because you passed it for another game. What was that game and why?
Yeah, you were yelling at me to stop because I was telling you about how I had seen this in the store at one point and I walked past it and I grabbed Zero Tolerance instead. And then Chris asked me what Zero Tolerance was, and I said, imagine you're playing Doom, but you're like one of the guys in Alien and you have to like clear 30 floors of this space installation while being harried by xenomorphs.
Like a cool game we got to check out next.
It
Yeah, it's
is
a lot of fun.
really good
I
game.
mentioned it like a couple of years ago and we never really touched on it, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I've seen this art like I've seen the cover before, right? And I'm familiar with the name, but I had no information about this title whatsoever, which is very surprising considering like how fun it actually is.
And it being such a cult classic and the fact that you grew up in a Sega household. I'm shocked that you didn't ever rent it.
I don't think it was ever at like the Snyder's, like I just don't ever remember seeing it there.
For me, I don't have a ton of memories about this game, despite having a big love for the game, because this was a rental. And you guys know how it is. Back in the day, you'd rent a game and you get maybe 2-3 nights if you're lucky about their
Yeah,
return policy.
you get that weekend return.
Yeah. So we talked about the difficulty in the history section, and this was a tough game. I never got anywhere as a kid. The furthest I think I got was maybe to like 2-2. I definitely never got to the second episode's boss, because when I did as an adult in a replay, which we'll talk about here shortly, I had no memory of ever seeing that boss. But for me, playing that game as a kid, it just looked so cool. And especially in the 90s, comic books were a really big thing, much bigger than they are now. I think maybe it's because I got out of them. Maybe they're still a huge thing, but I remember comic books being all over the place when I was a kid.
Yeah, I was really into comics.
This title certainly speaks to the art style of the 90s era comic. Like I'm thinking of like the Spider-Man cartoon, like Spider-Man,
To me, this
radioactive.
was Image
Like,
Comics. This
yeah,
was
but
the
it was
style
that
like
and like Spawn and all those
Uh-huh.
like sorts of
Yeah, I thought of
Yeah, it's-
Spawn a lot.
It's very like bright colors and contrasting, and it just feels very much like Carnage is gonna burst out of a wall for me and start beating me up.
Like I said, I don't have a ton of memories talking about this game. The intro where you hear the Elvis impersonation of Sega, that's something that I've gone on to repeat throughout my life just because it
That's
just
stuck with
creeps in the
you.
back of my mind. Say
You
again?
walking around doing that
Yeah.
just stuck with you, and you
Sega. Yeah, it just kind of sticks in your
doing the
head.
dishes, and you just say it.
It's definitely been some really weird times throughout my life. So it just pops in my head. And of course, I'm going to say it, so I get some weird looks for it. But as far as like the actual game, I don't really have a ton of memories about it. And like I said, it didn't get very far. And it's not a very long game.
Holy smokes! No, it's not. Yeah.
Yeah, like we talked about it, the 2 levels got axed. There's only
I still would have been a short game.
I think
yeah.
if you're a competent player, you can probably bang this out in a half hour.
Well,
I
when
saw
we
like
talk about a replay, I'm gonna definitely
yeah.
hit on how long it took me because I definitely was not competent. I'll tell you that.
Oh yeah. Note that I said competent. It took me much longer than that, but I mean, like, I think you could probably speed run this in like 20 something minutes. I'm just saying, like, if you knew what you were doing and you've beaten it several times before, I think this is like a half hour title probably.
I did watch several speed runs and several no-hit runs as well, and
Just no hit runs.
that's gonna tie into what I have to talk about later because I had some infuriating moments. But that's all I've got. Chris, what about you? What's your history with this game?
For me, this game was a new kid that had this game, and on sleepovers I go over and play it, and I don't really remember playing it that often. I remember it being hard as a kid, and I just in the '90s I loved comic books, so just the the image and the colors and the style and everything about this game instantly drew me into it. But I remember it being a tough game. We didn't spend any significant amount of time playing it, but I remember always like picking this game to play first, and then with switching over to gosh, I think it's like Kid Chameleon or something like that. But but yeah,
That
that's
sounds familiar, but I don't know if that's really the
oh
title. Maybe that's just what I'm making in my head.
I think that's the one where like you turned into like a different stuff, right? I can't remember. Corey, you're the Sega master.
Sorry, what? I was looking up something else. What are we talking about?
Was Kid Chameleon a game?
Yeah.
Okay, was that the name of it?
There's the weird kid that like the James Dean looking kid with the
Yeah,
glasses.
with the leather jacket
Yeah.
and that was the other thing. I do remember like being really into comics and everything. Seeing the ads and seeing everything for Comic Zone. But yeah, but as far as my gameplay, it was actually pretty limited.
Yeah, that one the only thing I remember about Kid Chameleon is like turning into a samurai and beating people up.
I remember turning into like a reptile head and also like the Jason like Voorhees head or something like that.
Yeah, where you put the hockey mask on. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
okay. That game was weird.
I have never played this game. I'm familiar about it, but I've never ever actually played it. It reminds me from what you guys are talking about. It reminds me of Nemo's Dreamland. Is that the game? Little Nemo.
Little Nemo's in Dreamland.
I think I remember that
Yes.
game too.
It was for the NES, and there was even an anime about that game. That's a game that we should talk about. That's a great game.
What game?
Little Nemo, something Slumberland, Dreamland. I
I
can't remember.
googled it. It's Little Nemo the Dream Master. I've never heard of it in my life.
Oh my god, it's such a great game.
Oh man, yeah.
You can't tell me that video game devs in the 80s and 90s were not doing copious amounts of substance abuse.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's no way around it. You have to be absolutely out of your mind stoned to create 90% of what we love today as adults.
I'm gonna go off another tangent here, but I just want to talk about like the old Wild West era of porting titles from Japan, and it really ended, I think, with the PS1 when we started getting a lot more like AAA American developers. But I just remember half the stuff that came over here, like Jade Cocoon and Legend of Dragoon and like Grand Stream Saga and all those titles that got to the States, and you're just looking at them and it's like, who made this? Like, Sean, do you remember a title called Herc's Adventures?
No,
I
not at
remember
all. I have no idea what that is.
Herc's Adventures, you basically play like a real cartoonized what's the word, like misogynistic version of Hercules, and he's just like and he like, you're fighting skeletons that like threaten. One of them goes like, "I'll get your gizzard out," and like like swings at you. It's just an acid trip, and it's just the sort of things that we just group on as children. And I see Call of Duty 7, and sometimes I get sad.
There are still plenty of weird games that come out. There's just
Yeah, a lot of indie stuff. It's just like,
yeah.
but like a lot of the stuff we got from like Japan and like Europe and stuff, like they just sent it over here with a rough translation because they didn't have anything else to sell us.
Yeah.
And so we just got a lot of great titles that just made no sense. Like Toomba.
Tomb is great. So, Herc's Adventure is a video game released for the PlayStation and Sega Saturn by LucasArts in 1997.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Wow.
When LucasArts was still making video games.
How have I never heard of this game?
It's a great title.
Well, it definitely sounds like that, and I'll have to check it out. But I think that we've talked all we can about our childhood memories of Comic Zone. So let's
Like
curb it
Comic
here.
Zones is chasing stories.
Yeah.
Wait. One more quick question though. Did you
Is
guys
it about Herc's Adventures?
No, of course not.
Okay.
So Sean, you were into comics, right?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember seeing the ads and stuff like in the back pages for Comic Zone and all that stuff?
For this game, no, I don't. I don't remember any type of commercial advertisement for this game.
That's what I'm trying to like. I remember seeing the game as a kid, but I can't remember where. And every time I think about seeing like the ads in comic books, I don't remember actually really seeing too many. I remember seeing ads for like Kid Chameleon, and there's like another game that I can't remember. It's on the NSO.
I didn't bring this up earlier because it just 90% of the people, 90%, 99.999, basically nobody but you are going to know what I'm talking about. So in Ogden, do you remember that pizza place that also had video game rentals and movie rentals and everything?
Yeah.
It was right next to that bar called the Pink House. So
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I remember being in there and my parents were going to let me rent a video game, and I saw a kid took this title, Comic Zone, and his parents wouldn't let him for whatever reason. So that's when I was like, oh yeah, maybe it must be super cool. So that's why I grabbed it. I probably never would have picked this game up otherwise.
Peer pressure.
Yeah, you would have seen Zero Tolerance and you would have kept walking.
I remember when I was a kid, I liked this title so much. Like this was one of the few games that made me wish I had a Sega.
See, the thing that surprises me is that I'm the odd man out on this one.
I was really into comic books, so like this game was like the closest thing, because like you got to admit, like the X-Men games and the Spider-Man games and stuff of the day were kind of.
Don't bash the 6-man arcade cabinet X-Men game.
Oh no,
Yeah,
God, I
that's
love that game.
great. But if you're talking about like the X-Men LJN titles for the NES, those are absolute trash.
Yeah, they were awful.
And X-Men 1 on the Sega Genesis, also crap. But
Yes.
X-Men 2, the clone something.
Yeah, was that the one where you start and you're fighting the Sentinels? Is that the first level?
To my memory, and I could be wrong here, you start off the game and it's like this blizzardy.
Yeah,
wintry
that's
landscape.
Sentinel. That's the Sentinel
Okay.
installation. Yeah, you're like the Weapon X facilities.
Yeah, you don't even get to pick your character. You just
Yeah, you start with You start with, I think, Wolverine. I think, and then if you die, I think it gives you a random person.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it
it's
forces
just
you
weird.
into something else.
Yeah, that one's very hard.
that game also has one of the most ridiculous like hints ever. So spoiler for anybody that wants to ever play this game. When you get towards the end, there's a part where it says that you have to reset the computer. You have to reset your Sega Genesis. That's how you continue the game. It's
Yeah, like that game is so insane. The first level is the equivalent of beating Metroid because you have to like destroy the Master Mold Sentinel, and then you basically have to get out of the installation before it explodes, or you'll lose, and you'll have to do it all over again.
We add this one of the lists of the games for us to play next, because this is just sounding
Right
cool.
now.
it should be on there. It's a great game.
X-Men 2 is a great title. I think I'd get frustrated very fast. Have you never played X-Men 2?
Before we do move back to Comic Zone, I do want to mention like the X-Men arcade cabinet. When they did the port to the Xbox 360, I'm pretty sure I took the day off work to download it and play it right away. And it was right around Christmas time, so I might have had the day off for Christmas break or something. But I made the leaderboard because like there were leaderboards for each individual character.
Yeah,
and I made the leader and I made the leaderboard for being one of the best night crawlers like in the first week or something like that. I took a screenshot of it. Or I think I took a picture of it on my phone and put it on my Facebook. I was so happy. Like,
I think if I was ever to win the lottery, I think the 6-man arcade cabinet would be my first purchase.
oh my gosh, there's an arcade up here that lets you play it for free. And we went, I don't know, a couple months ago with my nephews, and because it was set up to let you play it for free, it had infinite amount of credits. And
Yeah,
somebody
so
had gone around and all 6 characters had like 999 lives to them, which meant if there's only 2 people playing, you had to freaking like we were playing all 3 like each of us were playing 3 characters
Oh,
because
I get what you're saying now.
That's
Yeah.
the screen was stuck and we couldn't just like wait for the characters to die because they had it like basically infinite amount.
Excuse me, miss, could you please reset the console?
I thought
Oh
about
my
climbing back there
God.
and unplugging it and plugging it back in. Like it was awful.
And it flips
I
back
was-
to coin play, and you're like, son of a.
I was so excited to play it, and then I look at Jacob. I'm like, "All right, you take those 3. I'll take these 3." Like, and we were like using our arms to move all 3 joysticks at the same time. We were just spamming the ultimate move button so that way we just die faster.
You just have to get to the next screen, and then we can play again.
Mm-hmm.
All right. With all that said, let's wrap it up here, and we're going to come back and talk about replaying this game in the modern day. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to be talking about replaying Comic Zone today. And starting us off is going to be Chris. Chris, how did you play it, and what was your experience with the game?
So I played this on the NSO, and my experience was fantastic. I don't know why I didn't give this game more attention as a kid, like especially now. Like most of the games that we all play are obviously huge nostalgia throwbacks, but this one, since like I mentioned, I was really into comics. This one just checked all my boxes because I love the art style, the hokey storyline, but really like as I was mentioning earlier, like this is like as good as it gets as far as like playing a comic book game. Like if you're into comic books, because you were literally in a comic book and you're busting through the panels, and there were no other games that were like this, like as a kid, and even still, like I mean, I've never seen another game where you were breaking panels and like, it's very like pre-Deadpool-ish kind of like, breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the humor and it's just great. And like it kind of, I mean, like the humor and the lines, like the one lines and stuff are kind of dated and show their age, but it holds up really well. I think the graphics, as far as like a retro game, like they hold up super great, and the difficulty was, I think this had the right amount of difficulty. It wasn't impossible.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, I disagree with you there, but I'll talk about that on mine.
I can see how I definitely was using save states and rewind, but I could see how, like, if you played this game and actually spent a good amount of time getting into it, you could be one of those people that get the no hit runs and stuff like that. And
Yeah, see, I think that's the operative thing there. If you were 13 years old and you had an entire summer to yourself, I think you could definitely make some progress with this one.
yeah, exactly, like some of the games that we played, like as a 13-year-old, like there was no way I was ever going to beat this. Like this one, if I actually owned it,
Like Batman.
I probably could have got pretty far into it. And playing it now, it had the right amount of difficulty to be fun, but it's not easy. Like this is not an easy game by any means, but it wasn't also. It didn't feel impossible. I didn't feel like I was cheating when I was using save states, because like there are some games that we play where, like, if I'm not using save states, they're like there's no way. I use save states on this just to save time and to make sure I actually saw the end of the game, but I didn't feel like I was using them like as much as I do like in other games, where there are some games that we play where I'm hitting that save button like every 30 seconds. Like, and this game wasn't that bad. Like you were mentioning about how like the puzzles weren't difficult enough. You could barely call them puzzles if you want to be honest about it, because they're not puzzles. They're just, like pull this lever and move that box. Like there was nothing I had to look up a guide for about in this game. What about you? Either of you guys?
As far as the puzzles go,
Yeah.
there was one section in the end where you have to throw a knife to hit a lever to make like a pillar come up and you jump on it.
Here in the lava.
Yes. Yeah.
The only reason I got that is because the lady literally says, "Hey, there's a lever over there." Like I think she even says, "Throw something at it."
But you can screw up because the knife is in the previous section.
Right. And I just happened to have the knife on me at that point, so
Does that soft
Well,
lock you?
I did not. No. So you can also jump in the lava, take a little bit of damage, and then
take a
drop through
lot of
that way.
damage.
Well, yeah. So yeah, that's in the third episode, and that's definitely some very poor game design, because up until this point, you've been using what was it, Roadkill, the rat, whatever the rat's name is. You've been using him to like go do stuff. So you can set him down, and I think he just kind of
Destroy
walks
you.
over the edge.
Yeah.
I don't think he'll walk into the lava, but that section in mind, I had to talk about that during my segment. But keep going,
I
Chris. I'm
think I
sorry.
had the knife just because I'm a kleptomaniac, and if it's on the ground, I have to pick it up.
I wasn't using any of my supplies unless I absolutely had to. And which I will say, like, for an early what year did you say this came out?
95.
95. I thought the inventory, the 3 slot inventory thing was pretty interesting. And the use of the rat I thought was great. Like the fact that you had a little pet buddy to help you out with everything. The way they incorporated the rat into the game I thought was super cool.
I wish he didn't take up an inventory slot.
I wish too, but at the same time it did add that level of,
It made me get to the point where I'm like, okay, well, I basically have 2 inventory slots because I have to keep the rat.
there were
So
times in the game where I'm like, okay, I know if I leave the rat, he'll come back to me in the next couple of panels. Like, so there were a couple times where I left him behind because I'm like, I really want this health and I really want that bomb. So there were a couple times where the rat would help me out. I'm like, okay, because I think it said that like the rat can also get knocked out. I found out early on, like in the very first level or area, that if your rat dies or gets knocked out, he comes back a couple panels later. So he is immortal. So there were a couple times where I traded him off for different stuff. But anyways, back to the whole overall feel playing it modern day. I think the graphics really hold up. The backgrounds were great. The music, it fit perfectly.
Well, I mean, it's like
Wait,
Sean
wait,
said,
wait,
it's
wait,
like
wait.
bootleg Smashing Pumpkins.
You said you liked the music?
No, I said it fit the game.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I was picking my words on purpose, like because the music, I don't remember a single tune of it, but I don't remember disliking it. If that makes sense.
It's just grunge filler music.
I think it's awful. It has that tin can, just obnoxious noise I know the Genesis can put out good music, but this isn't it. It hits that ear in that ultra annoying, vaguely tinnitus-like sound. I absolutely hate it, and it's probably my biggest turnoff of the game.
Listening to it mostly through little speakers, so it didn't bother me that much. And to be honest, it was just background. It was literally just background music for this cool retro game that I was playing.
That's true. But I've also been listening to it isolated, where
Oh yeah, yeah,
I'm
you're doing the
putting
extra
all
work.
yeah,
Yeah, I have
and
not been.
it's not great. It's not great.
Yeah, if you had to ask me which track to put in there, I would have no input at all. But this game, as I noticed, is super short. Like I think we mentioned, I don't know if we mentioned this off air or earlier or what, but yeah, like
You mentioned
if
it
you were
in the intro.
yeah, if you get good at this game, you could. This is like a half an hour playthrough game, and I wish they would have had the extra 2 levels in there because this game was just too short.
Sean, do you know what the music reminds me of?
What's that?
The background music of Revolution X.
Oh my god.
Same
Is it that
garbage.
bad?
Yeah, it's the same garbage, like just kind of bad rock that you hear throughout that entire game. Like
Lovely.
Yeah.
like just it's that sort of.
Cory, tell us about your replay of today.
My play of this was actually pretty fun. A couple things that caught me off guard from the beginning. This was kind of pitched, I think, when we sat down to talk about this one. This was kind of pitched as a side-scrolling beat 'em up title, and it very much is. But it also you've got an inventory system, which is not normal for that sort of game, and it also has like the multi-path directionality. So when you're playing this, you're basically going through the pages of a comic. So like there's the white dividers that split the scenes throughout the title, and you get to these places and you get to choose, like, do you want to continue right or do you want to go down, for example? And then you like punch your way through the white wall separating the images of the comic, and you jump through the floor basically, and now you're like down a row of panels. And it's just an interesting thing for them to like play with directionality like that, and the verticality. And as far as the puzzles go, we kind of talk about those. I think that was just another way for them to kind of explore the environment more than anything. They did botch it a couple times, but for example, there's the one point where you have to like light braziers, and then it starts to burn the page. And now you're on
Yeah,
a race down to the bottom of the page, as like these flames are chasing you down slowly, and the comic is being burned above your head, and it's vanishing. And it was just a really cool thing to see. And the art style, like we were talking about, the colors are very like high contrast, jarring. Everything pops out to you. Everything's really recognizable. So it was just a really really fun title. I'm on your end of the spectrum, Sean. This game was very punishing, and it beat me up and took my lunch money.
he was brutal. Oh my god.
Yeah, like when Chris was talking about not using save states as a handicap, like my whole thought process was like, I'm definitely using save states as a handicap, because otherwise, like this game would
Wow.
have eaten my quarters. This definitely would have made the developer a lot of money if this were in an arcade.
My save states were pretty much limited to like the beginning of each scene.
More power to you. Like I don't know if I don't have the reaction time anymore or what, but like I just was getting punched in the mouth repeatedly.
I spammed. I was button mashing this game. Like
It's fine. I'm just
any enemy that popped up, I would just corner them and just
no
button mash the
from my
snot out of them.
perspective, like I was getting pistol whipped pretty frequently throughout this one. It was still a lot of fun though. It took a couple hours to get through it. There's only what, like 3 episodes?
Yeah, there's only 3, and each one is divided up into
Yeah,
3
like little
sections.
subsections.
But
Yeah.
even those sections are very, very
Yeah,
short.
but then like you have like the almost the like announcer lady, like your eye in the sky that your eye in the sky that kind of pops up
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
like, great job. Like, oh, we're good on to the next one.
Her name is Alyssa.
Okay, yeah. The only thing that I would say,
Your girlfriend.
the boss fights were not very memorable to me. Like, we've played this. I mean, we knocked this out what 3-ish weeks ago now. I can't really remember much about them. I remember there's like a lizard guy hanging from the ceiling,
Fingernails,
and
dude.
yeah, like the God, what's the film? What's the one with the guy from Roadhouse?
Big Trouble Little China?
Yeah, the Big Trouble Little China fight, like at the end of the second one in the sewers.
That's a great
Wait,
film.
what was that
The
one?
the
That's
guy with
the
the
long fingernail.
fingernails.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You got anything else?
No, that wasn't Roadhouse. That was Kurt Russell. Never mind.
Oh yeah.
The final boss was pretty cool.
Couldn't tell you.
Oh, that was the one where you had to use the So that was when he threw your girlfriend into the
Yeah, I just remember like you're in
rocket
an
or something like that.
installation. I don't even remember how it resolves though.
Yeah, he throws her into this vat and that fills up with water, and you have
It
to
is the
like,
nuke, yeah.
yeah, you have to like rush over and like flip the lever that triggers the like back blast of the rocket to
While
hurt
he
him.
was standing on, yeah. Well, I mean, you still beat the
I just remember like
punch
you
the
also can
snot out of
turn
the
into a
dude.
superhero and you punch the ground and it like causes a rip in the page that was really cool looking.
Okay, so one of the things that didn't take the time to figure out after I played through the game for the most part, I watched a speed run and somebody was like, "Is there a way you can rip the page and make a paper airplane and throw it at the enemies?"
I have no idea.
Okay, good, because I had no idea about that. I was watching like a speed run where this dude was like exploiting this mechanic where instead of using the rat to, because like for all the viewer or listeners, one thing your rat does is that he finds items, and the way he finds items is by like ripping a hole in the page and then he pulls the item out. Well, in the speed run I was watching, apparently your dude can like rip the page himself and he can make a paper airplane and then throw it across the stage like a missile, and it just wrecks everything in its path.
So I googled this. Anytime during the game, simply press and hold the punch button. After a second or so, Sketch will tear a piece of paper from the background and make a paper airplane out of it. The plane will travel to the edge of the panel and circle back around. The plane does massive damage to all enemies' objects and Sketch himself, so be careful, as no, you can lose a considerable amount of health when creating the plane. I wonder if you can do that to hit it if you don't pick the knife up.
That would have been good to know. Good to know.
And the funny thing is, like, you always give me grief about not looking up the owners.
Well, this isn't in the manual. This is the cheat section from GameSpot
Yeah,
from 12 years ago.
because I did look up the manual for this game, and that's like, and I read the little comic that came with it, and I don't remember seeing the airplane thing anywhere in there.
Hey, Sean, do you want to hear another cheat? In some areas, you can make Sketch fart by constantly pressing down on the
No.
D-pad.
Why?
I don't know. Just because it's a crass 90s comic thing.
We got a fart mechanic, but not an additional level.
Yep.
Great. Good stuff. Good going, STI.
It's a
Good
spiteful
going.
dev that slipped that in there.
What are you talking about? That's for like the head writer. Like,
No, it was somebody that was like, I'm doing this because I'm stuck here and it's the weekend.
So for my playthrough, I played this using a real cart, but I was using a Retron 5.
I should say quickly, I was doing the Mega Genesis collection on Steam. I
Oh,
have that,
nice.
so
I think I have that too, but I wanted to play it on my television that way. But this is a game that I keep coming back to over the years, and each time I fall in love with the atmosphere of this game and the aesthetic because I just love that comic book look. And the branching paths that you were talking about, Corey, as you can choose which panel to go to, is awesome. Seeing the hand that comes into the scene and drawing the next bad guy is just such an amazing touch. And I already talked about the music and how bad and god awful that was, but you touched on this earlier, kicking the enemies through multiple comic book panels is just so
yeah, just
badass.
the environmental use in comparison to some of the other titles. Because like how many side scrolls have we played so far? We've played like I would say Streets of Rage, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and then we've also played like adventure games like Shinobi and
Yeah.
Castlevania. But like this is probably the first one that's really used the environment in such a way like that.
What I was saying. And one thing, like those other games, like some of those side-scrolling levels seem like they kind of go on for a while. In this game, like it felt like you were in a page of a comic because they were all kind of
Yeah,
short and
everything's fast paced, like you're being shot out of a blowgun.
yeah, but everything was even like the levels themselves aren't that long. The game's not that long. There's not that many chapters to it. Like anybody that's familiar with comic books, like there's like 6 to 8 panels on one page. That's kind of what like each stage felt like too. I thought it was really neat.
Yeah, that is a good point. And the enemies I thought were really cool. I loved the variety, but there wasn't a ton of variety. Each of them are so beautifully drawn and so well animated that I can understand why there aren't dozens and dozens of different types of enemies. But I really wish that each episode had exclusive enemies and they just stuck to just that section of the game. And maybe at the end they all come together in some type of grab bag of bad guys, but that's neither here nor there.
Sean, I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
What is that lizard man yelling at me throughout the entire first level?
So that was something that I noticed is that they'll have these speech bubbles and they'll say something, but what they are saying, the actual sound, is
It
very
sounds like
different.
he's saying "tuck it in," and I'm not sure.
Yeah, you're talking about the sewer guys with like
Yeah,
the
tuck it in,
yeah.
tuck it in. Like I don't know what that is. I think he's making a lewd remark. I'm not sure.
That's on the same level of like the Mortal Kombat Raiden,
Yeah.
speeches that you just don't understand.
Who is the guy, the dev that's in Mortal Kombat, the toasty guy?
Is that
Toasty. Does the uppercut
is that
whenever you like corner somebody?
is that Tobias? Because there's Ed Boon and Tobias. I can't remember the creators of Mortal Kombat. But we're not talking about Mortal Kombat. We're talking
I
about
googled it. It's the sound dev, Dan Forden.
oh, it was? Oh.
Yep.
But this game, Chris, I don't know what you're talking about. This game is hard. It's so much harder than I remember it being as a kid. And so I do have a problem with some of the consistency of the rules of the game. For example, in the second episode, there's a section where there's these little flying alien wasp looking things that just come up out of the ground endlessly. And up until now, you've been taught by the game that you have to defeat all the enemies on the screen before progressing. But here, you have to deal with this respawning enemies over and over again, but you have to go to the far left of the screen and destroy some boulders before you can decide which path to take. And I don't mind the game tossing me variety, but your partner, Alyssa, like I mentioned earlier, she appears on the screen and will sometimes give you hints. She could have said something like, hey, they're never ending.
I swear, isn't
But
there
she
something
says,
like cover it up or something like that? Or
well, she says they've made reinforcements. That doesn't tell me anything. That doesn't help. And you already mentioned this part, Cory, about that in the second episode where they light the comic on fire. That was just so freaking cool. I loved how this game just made me feel like I truly was trapped in this
Yeah, it
world.
was a lot of fun.
That was tons of fun. Until you get to the end and you beat the boss and there's a good and a bad ending.
oh,
And I feel so bad for the child out there that actually struggled as to get all the way through the game just to get the bad ending.
wait, what's the bad ending?
So I beat this game twice. So at the end, where we talk about that girl, your girlfriend Alyssa, being shoved inside of that little tube,
Mm-hmm.
if the water fills up and she dies, you can still kill him, but you get a bad ending.
Oh,
That sucks.
Yeah.
what? Okay, go on. What's the bad? I have to know. What is the bad ending?
It's basically just like, oh, you failed to save her. It just, there's not really much to it. So in the good ending, it shows a panel of you kissing her, and she's now in the real world.
Yeah, she comes to the real world, and yeah.
But in the bad ending, it's just like, well, you done goofed. She's dead. Oh well.
That sucks.
But she
man.
wasn't real in the first place, so
Yeah, but can you imagine putting in the effort to be doing this as a child, like you're 12 years old or whatever, then you get here and it's like, yeah, you suck, try again, loser.
Okay, so I played through this until I got good enough that I could beat the game without save states.
oh
And
my
I
gosh.
beat the game without save states, got to the end, and got the bad ending. So I was like, all right, screw this. I'm gonna play again, but I'm gonna cheat because there's cheat codes.
There are?
I just told you about a cheat code to throw a paper airplane to kill everything on the screen. And a cheat code to fart.
And more specifically, there's a code for unlimited health.
That would be amazing.
Well, there's a catch, and this got me. You have to go to Jukebox. It's in the options menu. You have to push C on the following numbers 3, 12, 17, 2, 2, 10, 2, 7, 7, 11. And then you hear a sketch say, oh yeah, or something like that.
Write that down, kids.
Here's where it sucks. That section where, Cory, you're talking about, can you get soft lock there?
Yeah.
If you have unlimited health and you touch the lava, your guy just floats in air and freezes because you're expected to be damaged and he gets stuck there. So it's like, oh my God. Okay, I'm gonna reset. Now I know better. I looked up the walkthrough, the speed run. I was like, all right, how do you do this? That's when I saw you're supposed to throw a knife. Infuriating because there's no mention of that, but whatever. So I get to the very end and I fight the guy. I didn't know that even after you beat him and the water's rising, you still have to push a lever to drain the tank. So she died again. So I was like, I don't care. I'm going to watch the good ending on YouTube now. This is just infuriating.
That's rough.
Yeah.
Anyway, she's just a drawing.
The good ending hints at a possible sequel.
Yes,
It
I
talks
saw,
about,
and
like-
then cuts to the credits right away.
I'm telling you, I just don't think that they got enough, like, I don't think they sold enough to do it.
I don't either. It's a great game, but if word of mouth got out about how hard that is, I can understand why people wouldn't pick that up for their.
Well, not
own
only that,
content.
I think it just falls into the thing of like advertising and being a recognizable title as well.
Well, with all that said, guys, you want to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll give our final thoughts.
Yays.
All right, sounds good, Chris.
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, stick around. We're going to come back with our final thoughts.
Welcome back.
Okay, yeah, what are we talking about? What game are we on?
We're talking about Comic Zone and we're doing final thoughts. Please keep this portion in, Sean.
You got it. So you just heard it. We are now back. We're going to do our final thoughts. Chris, Comic Zone. Is it something you're going to play
Definitely.
again? Are
Yeah.
you done with it?
Nope, I'm actually I'm gonna keep this one loaded up and ready to go again and see if I can do better without save states because I really this is a great side-scrolling beat 'em up with I like the fighting action, I like the different moves, I like the controls, I like the graphics, I like everything. Like Fantastic game. Thank you for the awesome idea.
You're welcome. Cory, what about you?
I probably won't pick it up again. I mean, here's the thing, it's a fun game. If you've never played it before, I would suggest that you give it a shot just to see what it looks like. Because if only for the art style, I think it's a very cool title. It's just, it's one of those things where it's like a frustrating enough difficulty for me, and I am not willing to put the investment into it to like get through that hurdle where I just don't care enough. So I've experienced it. It was a lot of fun. I can confidently put it over here now and not look at it ever again.
It's funny to me that you say that, but you did the 3 life challenge for Contra.
Well, yeah, because I have a history with Contra and I had to show them who's boss.
That's fair. That's fair.
I also didn't have a lot going on that week.
I definitely agree with you when you say that you've experienced it, and this game is an experience. It's just so unique, and there's so many things that you don't ever see anywhere else just because of that setting, being in the comic book. And Chris, you said earlier that you'd never seen anything like it before or after, and that's true. I've never seen anything else like this. It's just such a unique experience. So definitely check it out. For me, am I going to play this again? Probably not, because I've already gone through it twice and I still haven't legitimately got the good ending. So that's enough for me. I've played through it. I've done what I had to do, but I don't think I'm coming back to it.
You don't have to beat it again. Like this is like one of those games that I'll put in my library, like Ninja Turtles and all the Mario games and
I don't think this
Mega
ranks next
Man,
to
where
Ninja
like
Turtles.
I can like load up any of those old retro games and play them for 20 minutes when I need something to kill. If I'm on my lunch break and I just need to turn my brain off for 15 minutes, I can just throw it in and just have fun with it. This is gonna be one of those games. I'm not gonna like sit down and like seriously play it and like get into it, and it's not gonna like distract me from like the main games I'm playing. But it will be one where if anybody asks me about like cool retro games to check out, I'll definitely mention this one. Or, show this one to my nephews or something like that. Like it's just a fun one.
And that's fair.
So, Sean, that you were talking about if we had seen something like this before, the closest thing that I can tie this into off the top of my head is Beautiful Joe.
Yes, I love Beautiful Joe. And that's for the GameCube initially, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I think I own that game. I'm pretty sure I do. That would be a good game. But getting a hold of it would be pretty difficult.
Yeah, that would suck. I don't think they ever re-released it on anything.
I don't think so. I guess, like, when I think about Beautiful Joe, I also think about The Wonderful 101. Have you ever played that for the Wii U and then Switch?
No.
It's a pretty great game. I definitely would recommend just trying it out because it was a lot of fun to me. But I think that's going to wrap up final thoughts. Our next game will be Grand Theft Auto Vice City for the PlayStation 2.
We're actually playing Revolution X, thank you very much, and we're going to help Aerosmith beat the bad guys.
We can try to get...
Who are they
King
even
Tyler
fighting
on.
in that game?
I don't know. It's just one of those games that everyone's played and nobody really knows why they played it.
Because it was in the arcade and the good games were like,
throwing CDs at things.
the good cabinets were taken by the big kids.
Well, it was also the fact that it had a gun. It had an actual gun.
Yeah.
I went to an arcade. I wanted to play a shooter game, and Area 51 was taken.
Yeah, Terminator 2 with the cool machine gun with the grenade launcher on it was occupied, so I played Revolution X.
I love Area 51. I have so many stories about that game that I could talk for hours.
One of my favorite memories with you, Sean, is when we went to Indiana Beach, and we finished out the rest of the night like dumping $10 worth of quarters into Area 51.
Yes.
Area 51, Time Crisis 4, and Terminator 2.
Oh, so good. So good. But that said, thank you all out there for deciding to listen to us yet again. We've got 52 episodes and we're going to keep making them until we die, I guess. I guess that's
Crisis
the plan.
2. It might have been 2.
We should have done Area 51 on the 51st episode.
Oh, that would have been badass. But nevertheless, Chris, Cory, thank you so much for taking the time to play this game. I hope you enjoyed the experience. For all of you out there, thank you so much for listening to us. We've been Superannuated Starman.
Bye.